we'll have the conversation about DyNasty and Redraft. So let's have this conversation. Get the painful stuff out of the way right away. Rashee Rice, they've already ruled him out for week 5. That's obviously he's going to miss more than that. He got friendly fire, if you don't know. Mahomes rolled up on him, and I can only imagine how he would feel as the quarterback, throwing an interception, then going low on somebody and hitting his own top wide receiver and top weapon while they're already hurting with Pacheco out. So it said feared ACL tear, which would put him out until about this time next year, and then he would work his way back in and be several weeks after that. So you would really be counting him on that playoff run at the end of the year next year. Whew, that sucks, man. That was a big hit.
Yeah, I was obviously as our resident Chargers fan, I was watching the game pretty closely, and just to see that it was nasty to happen, and you could tell he knew he was going to be out for a little bit. He was upset, hung the towel over his head as he was carted off. It was going to be a rough one, and he, leading into this week, was one of the leading wide receivers. Kind of the surprises this early start of the early season so far, at least for where you drafted him. So,
14 targets the game before.
Yeah, it's insane. He's getting everything that used to go to one wide receiver plus Travis Kelce for the most part for the first 3.5 games or so. So it's a bummer to see. It happened in their first offensive series, so he never even got his hands on the ball, and it was rough to watch. But now it's time to talk about. We always care about the player, but it's time to talk about what do you do in this situation now. If you were riding high with him as your potentially drafted him as your number 2 receiver, but he was playing wide receiver 1 for you.
So I'm in a keeper league that I have him in. That it's a keeper league where you keep him for whatever round they were drafted in. So I kept him he was drafted as a rookie last year, and I got to keep him for a 13th rounder. And for me, I was like, okay, this is my, famously, Devontae Adams is one of the people that are still on the original roster in that keeper league. You only get to keep one, but I was like, this is my Devontae Adams, and I have him for so long. And it did bring up the question for me of, is it worth the wait now with such a large injury in a keeper? Not DyNasty, but a keeper league. The question really is do I put him and do I take up one of those IR spots for the rest of the year now, just for the option to keep him next year? I don't know what the answer is there yet.
Yeah,
but it seems really hard to convince myself because he's not going to be normal next year, I don't think, if it is an ACL tear.
Yeah, I mean, it's really early to tell. A lot of speculation going into not sure about what the injury and the depth of that injury is. But yeah, we haven't seen, folks come back from that and be right out the gate, especially for a wide receiver who relies on being able to pivot, being able to cut out in their routes and whatnot. So it'll be longer than when he's available, right? Return to,
and then when he's available, you mentioned it earlier that the injury is not the only looming thing.
So we all. Whatever was going on in the off season, we had the looming suspension potentially coming up. So we don't know if that's coming. Or if that will still impact next year, or do they hold it back? Does the NFL hold it back once all the legal proceedings are out of the way until he's actually playable? So many factors going in. So yeah, if you are in a situation where you have him in your lineup, depending on the type of league we're talking about, you've got some decisions to make down the line here.
Yeah. One of the things that I mentioned right before we started recording is in Redraft, and you have fab system, would you throw out 15-20% of your fab while the news, because just no one knows yet. No one has the final answer. I did hear Pro Football Doc, who's on Twitter, and he's a doctor that knows a lot about sports injuries and a lot of his kind of assessments. He watches the tape and kind of breaks it down, and he's pretty accurate in his first initial feel was that it's not an ACL tear, how it hit, and he mentioned a couple different words that had too many syllables for me to remember. But it was a 4 to 5 week thing he was saying. He said he wouldn't be shocked if it was an ACL tear, but his initial review of the tape didn't make him feel like it was. So that being said, he's worthless in redraft if he's out all season, obviously. But do I then throw a 15-20% fab offer that expires at the end of today and say to the owner that hey, if you want to get something for him and take that risk to cash out, I don't know. I think I might actually do that in a couple of leagues and see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising that you would take that route anyway, because that's the type of trader that you are, getting it out there and just taking risks, because you never know what's going to happen. If you're doing really well in your league and you can hold out a spot for the playoffs and there's a potential for him to come back, I think it's a fun, risky move to make. Don't know that I would make it, but yeah, it makes total
Would
sense to do it.
you have a Rashee Rice, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and I sent that offer right now? Would you take that offer
For $20 of a fab in a redraft league? No, I'd rather hold
20%?
or 20% of your fab in a redraft league, depending on my roster construction and how I'm set up for the rest of the year. I might take it, but probably not. If I'm doing well and I have a wide receiver on the bench, I'm going to hold on to that roster spot because I will hope
Okay.
that he's there for me in the playoffs. But if I'm kind of in the middle of the pack right now and I need to replace him on my roster, yeah, I could potentially make that move.
And then, so I'm assuming then, because it felt like you're a hold, so I'm assuming then if you don't have an IR spot to put him in and waivers are hitting, and it's still in this same position where we don't know, but it sounds like it's an ACL tear, are you just holding him and taking the L on the waiver week, or are you dropping him?
I'm taking the L on the waiver week. If
Okay,
we don't
yeah.
know before tomorrow night, and I'm relatively confident we'll know before tomorrow night. But if we don't know before tomorrow night, then yeah, I'll take the L on the waiver.
Yeah. And now in DyNasty, where are you with him? If you can get a good deal right now, and same kind of theory of like take the risk that it's not as bad as it seems like it is. Because I mean, long term, I think 2026 is when you're going to be, or end of 2025, if he's not suspended during that time, then you'll get to use him if it is an ACL tear. So you're a couple of years of his career just got erased, and
this is so
like
weak.
it is, but it is, but it's unknown right now. So usually you know so fast. So this unknown piece makes me feel like I should send an offer out for Rashee Rice, but I don't know as the owner of Rashee Rice or the manager if you're going to be able to make a decision right now, or if you're just like wait.
In this scenario right now where we're at, if we don't know and someone threw me an offer, no one is going to offer me the amount that I would want to get to let him go. Right.
Okay.
Like he's more expensive than he's worth even with that risk right now. Once you do know though, because like what you just talked about, like thinking 2 years out, and you know that I play Dynasty in a 3-year cycle, and the uncertainty, I'd probably take a deal today. After we know like he's going to be out for a year plus, he'll return to play in maybe 18 months or 12 months, but the return to peak performance will probably be much longer than that. So all of that in mind, like I'm probably more susceptible to take trade offers once we have that news and be more reasonable about it. But while there's if I can get someone that is convinced that, or they think that they have a shot to get him back before the end of the year in a redraft, he has a shot to come back next year, and they believe in the talent, and for some reason don't think a suspension is looming, and they're depending on him for 2025. I'm making that deal because I can probably get more than he's worth in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Now there are some fantasy implications. We'll be talking about some waiver pickups for different positions, but I guess, are there anyone specifically that you would want to hit from a Rashee Rice perspective of the Kansas City Chiefs? Who's interesting to take some of those targets that we're obviously going to lose from him? We got Worthy, who's not a waiver, and the person who has them right now is not selling them for cheap. So
right.
But we've got I think Noah Gray is a good example of, he kind of got a little bit of an uptick, and he might, as a tight end, you might want to grab him, or possibly even Kareem Hunt, who was the running back after Steele fumbled, and he's a pass catching running back. P. Ryan is as well. Who do you think that this is really going to save the day, or is it someone that's not even there yet?
Well, I think one thing, I mean, from not a waiver perspective, I think this will help a resurgence, hopefully, of a little bit more of what Travis Kelce owners were expecting coming into the year. Maybe he gets a little bit more back involved in this game. Someone that we saw benefit a little bit when Rashee was out of the game for a little bit a couple weeks ago, JuJu is there. And this is kind of the role that he had prior to leaving for New England or wherever he left for after. Right? He had that that route running specialist, kind of mid level targets, kind of the target eater out there. So definitely could see JuJu taking it in if he's still got the legs for it. We don't know. We'll see here in a little bit. I don't see Worthy being someone that's gonna increase targets. He's that speedster guy going over the top, and they're going to find creative ways to use him and maybe use him more frequently. But I don't see him jumping up to 10, 11 targets a game. So it's got to be one of those guys. Skyy Moore got a little bit more involved yesterday after Rashee went out, but he was dropping passes and the ones that were right in his hands. So we don't know who's going to end up with.
Yeah. So we have, I think Juju's like he's about 35% owned in DyNasty, so he might even be available in your DyNasty, and he's almost not owned at all. And he's just probably available in your redraft. Yeah. So I mean, it's not bad to take a flyer on it. I personally probably wouldn't. I would do it in DyNasty. I don't think I would do it in redraft. I think Gray though, who's he's also rostered 35%, and then in DyNasty and 2% in redraft. But if this is a weird year for tight ends, where I feel like Noah Gray would be a fine addition to throw onto your back of your bench and just see what happens over the next few weeks.